Hi, I'm Gwen, and I am a friend of Bill W. And I wanted to share my journey with finding God of my understanding. If you've watched the previous video, then you know that my earliest idea of God was formed way before I ever received religious instruction. And these are just some pictures of me when I was little, and that was my favorite toy growing up in the middle. A kind of a rubber um, bendable Pink Panther toy. I just love that guy. So when I was growing up, every week we went to this place called church. I felt uncomfortable there, but I didn't know why. A lot of things that I learned there didn't really make sense to me. Um, and I couldn't explain why that either. My family religion, the teachings seemed to be like really nice, and God was compassionate and caring and nurturing, but for some reason I was just unable to believe that. I just I just couldn't imagine God being that way because I had already formed an idea of who God was. I didn't know that at the time, and actually I haven't known that for 60 years. Wow. It's a long time to be like hiding behind a mask. And one day I got this idea. It was given to me to what were like the populations of the top 12 world religions. And I this is done a year ago, so the numbers here are from 2024 actually. And I didn't put the emblems for each religion there because you can just see that there's different numbers in each one of them. And I thought that was really kind of interesting, and that the total population at that time was 8.2 billion people. That's a lot of people that have their own religious beliefs. But the one that I grew up in taught me, or the way I understood it, is that the religion I was in plus another smaller one, we were somehow connected, and that what I learned there is that if you were in the group that I was in, God accepted you. And if you're not in that group, God rejects you. And when I saw that, I thought, well, how can that be? How can I believe in a power greater than me that rejects 73% of the population? How can I believe in a God that does that? That just made no sense to me. And it's no wonder I have never really been able to turn my will and my life over to God of my childhood religion, because this was what my religion taught me, or that's what I learned anyway. And then I looked a little closer at it. The world population, 8.2 billion people, and it's kind of a scientific fact that you can, say that 10% of the population are alcoholic types. And for the world population, that leaves two, I'm sorry, it leaves 820 million people who are alcoholic. And if I applied the 80-20 rule, because only 20% of that 820 million are actually going to work the program and work and strive to find that higher power. And I took this as a God wink, that 20% as 164 million. 164 is the number of pages in the big book instruction part. Wow. So I kind of felt like I was onto something here. So then I kept going, and when I thought about the big book, did you know it's been translated into 71 different languages? And these are just the top 10. But I looked at some of the other ones, and there is even a pamphlet in Inuit. which is like Eskimo language. And I got one of those and I gave it to a Native American friend of mine, which it was just so cool to actually have something like that to give to someone. It's like, this is my native language. Wow. Native, yay. But anyway, the reason I was looking at is was the thing that really gets us hung up on finding that power greater than ourselves is that, and what I found next is that it says in the big book, within every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. And that doesn't matter what religion you're from. Every single religion has within their men, women, and children the fundamental idea of God. They all have the fundamental idea of God, no matter what your religion is. So when I looked at that, I thought, wow, there's 164 million people worldwide who are all searching for the God of their understanding that will solve their problem with alcohol or drugs or whatever your problem is. So I decided I needed to change my old ideas about God. Since I got in recovery, I've been searching for that power greater than I that can help me solve my problem. And the thing that they tell you to do is that you need to be honest, open-minded, and willing. So that's what I ask myself every day. Am I being honest about how my ideas are working? And I thought I had um, a higher power that was working, and for some reason I still was struggling. So I had to be open-minded about examining my old ideas and willing to change my old ideas. And from my perspective, I mean, my childhood religion was handed down to me from, my parents and their grandparents and on, I don't know how many generations since it's been passed down. Some religions have been passed down for thousands of years and hundreds of generations. And does anybody stop to look and see what are we really doing here? So I just said I'm gonna look outside and see if God is lives outside of these religions. Um, and this this came across my mind. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong. And I don't know if you remember that song by Buffalo Springfield, but yeah, there's a song called that. And for a while, I just had that song was just running through my mind like somebody had said, listen to the song, listen to the words. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong. Well, what if everybody is wrong about God? Um, I don't know if that's true or not, but it doesn't seem like man's ideas of God are really working because there's so many wars and fighting and um, starving and power structures that are unloving around the world that I'm having a hard time believing that the religions of the world have it right. So I opened my mind up to say, well, maybe there's something outside of religion. That was very, very helpful too when I set aside listening to all the worldly clamors and I did everything I could to keep my mind on loftier things. Like I listened to recovery podcasts all day. I wore headphones all day. I watched meditations. I listened to meditations. I watched uplifting videos. I studied William James. I studied Carl Jung. I listened to all the recordings of Bill Wilson that I could get my hands on, and all of those things blocked out the worldly clamors and help me to regain my ability to think straight. And that was a huge plus there. And once I had cleared my thinking, I was able to put some pieces together that I had never been able to see before. Uh, Things that Bill Wilson had done or read, or things that he had learned, I discovered alongside. Well, he left his story actually in a book called Bill W. My First 40 Years. If you have a chance to read it, I highly recommend you buy the book and even start a book study on it. It's phenomenal. It talks about his entire life and how he just strove to be number one at everything he did. And I am of the belief that he believed that he could cure alcoholism and that his alcoholism was the pinnacle of his super ego. And of course, his ego could not break it. And it broke his ego to the depth far enough that God responded to him. And that's when he had his spiritual awakening. Now, that's just my thoughts. You can have your own. But I gave the spiritual side a fair hearing and I've discovered my own path to God. It's been just so phenomenal. I'm so, so thankful. So then I found the missing piece that I'd been searching for. And since I got in recovery 13 years ago, this has been my quest, along with everyone else's quest who is in the rooms of recovery. I did a two-way prayer practice, and a couple of times I tried it with like a group, and I didn't really get anything out of that. I tried using like a form letter. Well, I would write a letter to God, but I had all the sentences already there, and all I had to do was like circle yes or no, kind of like yeah, check yes or no. Well, God didn't answer any of those goofy letters, but then I started a two-way prayer practice where I would just write a letter to Him, one on one, and ask Him questions about who I was, and I started getting answers. And it's been a year and a half that I've been practicing that, and I have gotten to know who God is for me, and he's always known who I am, so that's been a given, and it's been just wonderful. I highly recommend two-way prayer practice.